All right, I want to look at a commentary on another verse in Titus chapter 1, which is um, verse 15, where it talked about to the pure all things are pure. And I guess that I missed the mark on that when I did a run through, and just off the top of my head, I didn't know. I thought maybe it was talking about how it says to the pure all things are pure, and then it talks about to the unbelieving and the defiled. Their mind is defiled, their conscience is unpure or whatever. So I thought, then that means to the pure that their conscience is pure. I guess from the first couple of commentaries that I'm looking at, and this seems to make sense. I'll go to Albert Barnes. Um, that there's an allusion to the distinctions made in respect to meats and drinks among the Jews. And he also says to look at Romans 14:14 and Romans 14:20. And some articles of food were regarded as clean or allowed to be eaten, and some as unclean or forbidden. Paul said that those distinctions ceased under the Christian dispensation, and that to those who had a conscience not easily troubled by nice and delicate questions about ceremonial observances, all kinds of food might be regarded as lawful and proper. Compare the notes at 1 Timothy 4 and 5. If a man habitually maintains a good conscience in the sight of God, it will be accepted of him whether he do or do not abstain from certain kinds of food. Compare the notes in Colossians 2:16. This passage, therefore, should not be interpreted as proving that all things are right and lawful for a Christian, or that whatever he may choose to do will be regarded as pure, but as primarily referring to distinctions in food, in meaning that there was no sanctity in eating one kind of food and no sin in another, but that the mind was equally pure whatever was eaten. And I'll continue to read the next section, which is a little long, but the phrase has a proverbial cast, though I know not that it was so fused. The principle of the declaration is that a pure mind, a truly pious mind, will not regard the distinctions of food and drink, of festivals, rites, ceremonies, and days as necessary to be observed in order to promote its purity. The conscience is not to be burdened and enslaved by these things, but it is to be controlled only by the moral laws which God has ordained. But they may be somewhat higher application of the words that every ordinance of religion, every commandment of God, every event that occurs in divine providence tends to promote the holiness of one who is of pure heart. He can see a sanctifying tendency in everything and can derive from all that is commanded and all that occurs the means of making the heart more holy, while a depraved mind will turn every such thing into a pernicious use and make it the means of augmenting its malignity and corruption. To the pure mind, it will be the means of increasing its confidence in God and of making itself more holy. To such a mind, everything may become a means of grace. And he says, but unto them that are defiled and unbelieving is nothing pure. Everything is made the means of increasing their depravity. No matter what ordinances of religion they observe, what distinctions of meats or drinks or days they regard, and what events of providence occur, all are the occasion of augmented depravity. Such distinctions in food, they make the means of fostering their pride and producing self-righteousness. The mercies of God they abuse to pamper their own lusts, and the afflictive events of divine providence they make the occasion of murmuring and rebellion. Naturally corrupt at heart, no ordinances of religion and no events of providence make them any better, but all tend to deepen their depravity. A sentiment similar to this is found in the classic writers. I will look through some other ones, but it kind of plays off the idea of clean and unclean meats, is what I see, at least with the first two commentaries here going up on Study Light. Adam Clark is always above Albert Barnes. And Adam Clark says that unto the pure all things are pure. This appears to have been spoken in reference to the Jewish distinctions of clean and unclean meats. To the genuine Christian, every kind of meat proper for human nourishment is pure, is lawful, and may be used without scruple. This our Lord had long before decided. See on Luke 11:39 through 41. So I want to scroll through and see if there's any other ones that, let's see what else they say. I'm going to skip through the really long ones. In Kaufman's commentary, he says, to the pure all things are pure. He says, as Stibbs well said, things here does not refer to things which are morally wrong, but to objects. Unwashed pots, not ceremonially washed. Non-kosher food, graves, and other things considered ceremonially unclean are the type of things in view here. And Gold stressed the misuse of such a passage as this. Someone utters a vile, indecent, vulgar, or profane story or remark, and another more sensitive soul expresses disapproval, whereupon still another justifies it by saying, to the pure all things are pure. So Kaufman is saying that Gold, this guy, or whatever, however you pronounce it, Gould, he made this quote saying that people can misuse this passage, saying to the pure all things are pure. So someone can say they're Christian, do whatever evil things they want to, and then say, well, to the pure all things are pure. So people could misuse this passage, and this part of this verse, which I found very interesting, and that makes it even more interesting to me, seeing how people could abuse that. I figured there might be some differences in opinion maybe in this, but then it goes on to say, of course Paul was not speaking of speech, behavior, or conduct, but of things, objects. Lenski also found in reference to 1 Timothy 4:4 and 5, where Paul stated that every creature of God is good, and nothing is to be rejected, etc. It seems like he kind of takes a different interpretation on the latter part, which says their mind and their conscience are defiled. He says Chrysostom said with reference to this that When the soul is unclean, it thinks all things are unclean. Such defiled persons are quick to see in the innocent actions of others cause for censure or blame. Which, that's kind of interesting. Could be saying to the pure, these foods and everything aren't unclean in and of themselves, and so believers, it's no problem for us to eat them. And then he could be saying, well, to the unbelieving, all things, nothing is pure to the unbelieving, and so unbelievers see issue with that. Basically, I guess. Oh, John Calvin's got kind of a long one. I don't feel like going over that. This is a little bit interesting too. The commentary critical and explanatory on the whole Bible. All things external are pure in themselves. The distinction of pure and impure is not in the things, but in the disposition of him who uses them, in opposition to the commandments of men. In Titus 1:14, which forbade certain things as if impure intrinsically. To the pure inwardly, that is, those purified in heart by faith. All outward things are pure. All are open to their use. Sin alone touches and defiles the soul. So some interesting stuff here. So, let's see, Wesley. All things are pure, all kinds of meat. The Mosaic distinction between clean and unclean meats being now taken away. But the defiled and unbelieving, nothing is pure. The apostle joins defiled and unbelieving to intimate that nothing can be clean without a true faith. For both the understanding and conscience those leading powers of the soul are polluted. Consequently, so is the man and all he does. So that is interesting how Paul links the defiled and the unbelieving together. So that nothing can be clean without a true faith. That's interesting. Way to go, Wesley. Calvin. Again? I thought I already looked at Calvin. Maybe that was somebody else. But again, Calvin's long. John Trapp. No. I'm gonna keep looking. Going right through them. Okay, Matthew Poole. That was the Calvin one. Calvinist. Again, he talks about meats and drinks. So, that's interesting, though. I didn't catch that was really the context of that. Weddon's commentary, again. This is interesting. It looks a little bit different. And I'm skipping past that, but I might go back to that weddings. I'm almost at the bottom here, and I'm just looking, is there anything else? There are some good ones, though. There's the critical commentary. I could go over that one. Wow. Man, there's quite a handful of more good ones that I could go over. But I don't know if I want to read any more of this. We're already 15 minutes in. Schaff's popular commentary on the New Testament. All things are pure for the pure. And then he says, for their use, that is. Because, and it says, look at Matthew chapter 15, 10 through 20. Because created good by a good God, and because blessed by him and sanctified by Christ, and because restored to man for his free use by him. When the morally defiled are also unbelieving, they abide in their sin. Nothing pure to them, it ministers to the impurity of their own nature. Interesting. So I could look at Weddens. There's Ellicott. I kind of like reading him sometimes too. Let's see what the Bible study New Testament says. Everything is pure. Compare Peter's vision in Acts chapter 10, verse 9 through 16, and what Paul says in 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 12. The meaning is the fulfilling of bodily desires. Isaiah, when lawful, a pure thing. I don't know why I say Isaiah. I don't know. A pure thing in the case of those who are themselves pure, but this is impure even when lawful to those who are themselves impure, defiled, and unbelieving. Paul is talking about Christians who make themselves impure by their attitude and unholy life. That's a little bit of a different commentary, so I'm going to skip that one and go to Weddens and then call it good enough. Weddens says, pure, all things are pure, just so far as the heart is pure, the eye is pure. The heart, under complete control of the law of purity, sees no effective incitement to lust in the external object. That control is the joint result of the divine law, the indwelling spirit, and the firm will, just so far as all concur. The world presents no objective temptation that wakes the sinful response from within. Them that are defiled, the slow bellies of Titus chapter 1 verse 12, their inward nature is tender. That takes fire at every presented spark, and the sparks are flying in perpetual circles around it. Every hour of the day, objects are occurring to awaken lust, gluttony, rapine. I don't know. Such men frame to themselves the dim theory of life that nothing is pure, and that all virtue is sham. To them no woman is chaste, no man is honest. All apparently good people are hypocrites, and your only honest man is the free liver who commits all rascality and makes no pretensions to a moral life. Nothing and nobody is pure just because they themselves are defiled. So that's kind of interesting. And the unbelieving, without that faith which works by love and purifies the heart, as these gainsayers and slow bellies and their subverts in Titus 1:11 were. Their mind, their intellect, so they think in accordance with systematic wrong, and believe that they believe it in spite of an undercurrent of moral misgiving in their conscience. Their moral sense is abolished, save the above undercurrent, which cannot be destroyed, and a false conscience is constructed, by which wrong is seen by them to be their right. So a few different things there, but it seems to mostly be talking about that, meats and drinks that may be seen as impure by the Jews are pure for Christians. And so, to them that are pure, all things are pure. But that to them that are defiled and unbelieving, if we're going to take the unbelieving Jews and say that they see, all things as impure. So interesting. I missed out on that. Just going over it, and so there's a lot more there to it. God bless.